It's the Worth Knowing live stream, and we're on the Cliff's Edge channel on YouTube. We're on my very own Substack, Worth Knowing with Matt Robeson, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn. And if you're finding that to be a confusing array of choices, it's nothing compared to the dilemma that Democrats have in front of them right now. For people who subscribe to my Substack, and if you haven't yet, that's worthknowing.substack.com. Earlier today, I wrote that this has become the Princess Bride dilemma for the Democratic Party. Clearly, I can't choose the wine in front of you. Clearly, I can't choose the wine in front of me. For the Democratic Party, we have been presented with two poison cups, which is, let's face it, what Donald Trump always aims to do with his provocations. Yesterday, Trump sent in the National Guard to Washington, D.C., a city I know well. I lived there for half of my childhood and half of my adult life. And he did it on the clearly bullshit pretext that there was an emergency need to fight crime. Now, that's so obviously false and so obviously paper thin. After all, crime is actually at a 30-year low in the city, that it's almost designed to provoke an attack, a rebuttal, or a dismissal. It's also obviously and patently a desperate attempt to distract from a month of political disasters for the president. His tariffs are pumping up inflation, as seen in the new CPI numbers from just this morning. Jobs growth is stagnant. His budget bill is going to cut more than 10 million Americans off of their healthcare coverage. And his base is furious at him for leading them on with conspiracy theories about Jeffrey Epstein for years that they fully bought into. And then he reversed himself and started hiding what's in those files. And it's him in a clear cover-up. Sending in the National Guard to fight crime is like that lever under a sheet of glass in case of political emergency. Break glass every freaking time. So what do the Democrats do? Here's how Politico described the dilemma this morning. Democrats are walking a careful tightrope. Lean too far one way and Democrats risk falling into a, well, actually, trap, responding to Trump with crime statistics, similar to the way they responded to complaints about inflation, citing statistics that it was coming down even as voters didn't feel that. So clearly, I can't choose the wine in front of you. We don't want to fall into that trap. We don't want to go where our DNA is itching for us to go and start fact-checking and fighting on his turf. And before we know it, we've spent a week as Trump's willing accomplices in shifting the political heat off himself. On the other hand, this is so incredibly dangerous. We have the specter of history hanging over us, the other republics that have fallen under the thumb of autocrats and turned into police states because they didn't fight hard enough while there was still time. Just this morning, the Washington Post scooped that the Pentagon is assembling a National Guard strike force ready to deploy on 1 hour's notice to anywhere and for any reason that Trump chooses. Right in plain sight, he's assembling his own private, shock troops to do his behest. That's on top of the upsurge in ICE officers that's slated to make ICE the 15th largest military force on planet Earth. Can Democrats ignore that? Clearly, we can't choose the wine in front of me. Those are the kinds of deep dilemmas that face us now. That's where we're at. So, what should we do? How do we get on the same page and start rowing in the same direction and make sure that it's the right direction? What are we doing well and what do we need to do differently? There's almost no one in America who's lived more closely with these questions in the last few years and who's a deeper thinker about them than my guest today, an old friend and Capitol Hill colleague of mine, former Democratic National Committee Chairman, Jaime Harrison. Jaime, I remember the days when I could describe you as my young friend. What the hell?
Hey, man, we're looking at you and me. We're both grayer and older, but hopefully, along with the gray comes some wisdom. Because in many aspects, we've seen some of this before. Some of it is definitely unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this in American history. But there are some signs that some of the things that we saw maybe even 20 years ago, and say in 2006, when you and I were both on Capitol Hill, are some of the same elements that I really believe are lining up today. I'm actually working on a Substack piece now that says that maybe 2026 is an echo of 2006. And are we back on a road to the majority as a result of that? And so, it's an interesting question. But the first thing that we have to do is George W. Bush was bad, but even George W. Bush was a hell of a lot better than this despot that we now have in the White House.
Oh, you're making me wistful for our younger days. I don't know. You're like Frodo Baggins. You haven't aged a day. You're like,
buddy.
I mean, talk about being preserved under glass, my friend. You're ageless. You're also making me wistful for, of all things, fucking George W. Bush. I can't believe that. That is how I feel. Let me. Okay, what we're gonna get to eventually here in this show is you've got a podcast.
Yes.
And I want to talk about it. One of the conceits of your podcast, which I think is quite great, is there's a lot of straight talk going on there. There's a lot of no BS. So I'm going to put this right to you right now. I'm going to put you on the spot. Are we fucking up this whole National Guard in DC thing? Should we be on the attack more, or is that falling into a trap?
I mean, we need to go on the attack more. And I applaud the mayor of DC yesterday. I thought she was very strong and forceful in her press conference. But we have to do more. And the party and the party apparatus, that means all of us, need to amplify more. Let folks understand, people who aren't in DC are like, well, why do I care about what happens in DC? We should all care about what happens in DC, because this is a symptom of the much larger problem that we have with Donald Trump. You laid it out perfectly. Looking at what he's talking about doing at the Department of Defense, the strike force that he's going to be able to deploy whenever he wants to. Looking at how he is forcefully going after the media right now. Getting rid of NPR and PBS, right? Basically, the unfettered press, or people who are just going to call it down the middle and where it is. He doesn't want them there. He's pressuring the big networks, right? Basically saying, get rid of Stephen Colbert, get rid of some of these other folks if they are not amplifying the message that I want. He's forcing our universities to basically say, there's going to be a litmus test in terms of what you do. I just read recently, we have a 250th anniversary of this nation, and he's saying to the Smithsonian, we're setting up an operation at the White House. I have to approve everything you say about American history, and it has to fit within the parameters that I believe is our history. Folks, like if it quacks like a duck, if it swims like a duck, if it flies like a duck, it's a goddamn duck. And this guy is a despot. He is an authoritarian. And basically, he believes that he is just like Putin. He can do whatever the hell he wants, whenever he wants. And he has a rubber stamp Congress that is allowing him to do that. And so we, the American people, have to take back our country and take back our government and make sure that the Constitution of the United States actually means something. That is not just some beautiful words, but there's something behind that. And that something is the American people. That's where we all have to wake the hell up, stand up, and say enough is enough.
So you would go forcefully at this. And I as I laid out at the beginning, I do think there's a dilemma there. I mean, you're back in the day when we were both on the Hill, one of your jobs for Jim Clyburn was to help the Democratic Party get onto and stay onto a message. I was a chief of staff for a member of Congress. You were Representative Clyburn's right-hand man. This is a lot of what you did, was try to corral us cats. As successfully as I think anyone could do it. And boy, is it a trap. I will say that for right now, I think Democrats have done a pretty damn good job of doing both. It's really, really hard. You can say, this is bullshit, despotism, distraction.
Yep.
I should have had 3 Ds there for alliteration purposes. You went to Yale Law School. I didn't. So maybe you can come up with a third D. But I mean, this is a deliberate, despotic distraction. There it is.
Yeah.
And at the same time, let's not let it distract us from the fact that he's tanking our economy, taking away our health care, and driving America into a ditch. We're doing a pretty good job of that. But overall, I think the job is next to impossible. And that's where I want to go with this. Yeah. You wrote, it's one thing for us to give advice. It's another thing for people to take it. Now, you wrote on your Substack last month, I'm going to quote you back to you. My time serving as chair was an honor. It was also during a Democratic presidency, and I can tell you firsthand the job is different when your party holds the White House. There are different limitations and freedoms. You may have a megaphone, but you also have less autonomy. Major expenditures, strategic shifts, even key hires often require a sign-off from the White House. That comes with real benefits, but it also means you're not steering the ship alone. We had our successes, the best midterms performance by an incumbent president since the 1930s. And no one is denying our failure to keep the White House. Still, the criticism rolls in, sometimes from those who didn't support you in the first place, or from folks who take issue when you try to modify their individual sacred cow. I just want to give you a chance to expand on that for just a moment. And you're embracing the fact that there are criticisms of you, as there are of any of us. I talk to you damn much. So like, you're willing to embrace them. But at the same time, to be fair, what do you wish people understood more about the job of DNC chair?
Well, like I said in that piece, it is a very different job when you have the White House and when you don't have the White House. When you have the White House, in essence, the DNC historically has become an extension of the White House itself. It becomes the political arm of the White House. Your job is to support the president, to amplify the president and his or her initiatives and what they're doing. But you almost become de facto staff of the White House as well. And there's a liaison at the White House that gives you direction. And it's similar, Matt, as you know, to the agencies. You can have a cabinet secretary who's at the Department of Treasury or Transportation. And in essence, most people think, well, if you're the secretary, then you're deciding where you're going in terms of your agency. No, not really. You get direction from the White House in terms of where you want to go or where you need to go in terms of your department. Yes, there are things on the margins, on the area that you can put your own imprint on, but ultimately it is doing the work of the White House. I do believe, though, that there needs to be some reforms in terms of that system, because unlike a cabinet office where you are an extension of that administration, when you're at the DNC, your obligation isn't just to the White House, but it's also to Democrats running all across the country, up and down the ballot. And sometimes when you have that narrow focus, and I would say that this administration actually was better at looking at how can we help Democrats up and down the ballot. I think Joe Biden has been one of the best, if not the best, party presidents that we've had, at least in my lifetime, because he understood the importance of supporting Democrats running across the country, but also the importance of investing in our state parties. And so we did that at an unprecedented level. But I still do believe that there's a little too much control that they have, and you need to have a little more autonomy when you're at the DNC, so that you can not only do the things that are important for the White House and the presidential campaign, but at the same time, you're making those decisions that are important for Democrats running up and down the ballot.
So there are two sides of what you just said that I kind of want to pick up on here.
Yeah.
One is sort of the criticism, the things that need to change. And the other side of it is, I think it's a little piece of inside baseball, maybe, but I think it has to do with the setup of the Democratic Party. Let's do both. Both. So first, on the criticism side, I mean, look, you are no stranger to the fact that Democrats and Democratic leaders, and you are one of them by default, have come in for a lot of criticism from the base. One of the things we do on this show, one of the things that I think you're not afraid to do on your podcast, is just deal straight up with people that have criticisms. And, we put them up in the chats right here. We have one from Create Progress, who says that you contributed significantly to the Dems' failure. Now, I'm going to just push back very slightly and echo something you said before, which is, let's not forget that we had a historic midterm win. And the first
Matt, I always say, okay, you can give me the failures, but you sure as hell better give me my wins too, right?
Absolutely.
You can't. I mean, and a lot of people say, well, it was abortion and all these other things. No, the DNC, in an unprecedented manner in that midterms, when everybody else was saying that this big red wave was going to roll in, we put over $100 million on the ground, not the year of the election, even before the election. If you take a look in every one of those battleground states, from Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Pennsylvania, guess what happened? We won governorships in those states. And this is why I believe that what we did was really important in that midterms. It built an infrastructure that allowed us to be even successful in the presidential election. Because yes, we lost the presidential race in Michigan and Wisconsin and Nevada and Arizona. But Matt, you and I both know there was something else that happened, because we also at the same time We kept the U.S. Senate races in Arizona, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and Nevada. Normally, when you lose the presidential, you're losing everything. But we built an infrastructure in those states that allowed us in order to even differentiate between these races. North Carolina is a perfect example. Kamala lost in North Carolina, but we won the governorship, the lieutenant governorship, the secretary of state, the attorney general, a Supreme Court race. How do you do that? You lose the presidential, but you win all those other races. That means that there's an infrastructure on the ground in these places that work. And I am happy to say that the DNC has, over the last 4 years, and even prior to that, under Tom Perez, invested resources in those places. And Ken Martin's going to take that to the next level right now. So yes, listen, I take all the criticism that I feel like it belongs to me. But in a presidential race, the DNC is not in control. We are basically doing what the presidential campaign asked us to do. And so, it cuts both ways.
And when you hear something like that, I mean, obviously the commenter Create Progress can speak for her or himself. What I hear is a baseline level of frustration that's not really about you.
Yeah.
That's not really about any one leader in the party per se. What I hear is Democrats in the base of the party saying, we are frustrated as hell, right? Like if there's one consistent theme in American politics over the last 50 years, Americans tell pollsters over and over again, we don't like the direction of how things are going. And right now, Democrats have the double whammy of we don't like how things are going in America, and we don't like when we lose to this insane maniac like Donald Trump. I understand their frustration, and I mean, it's easy for me to say because I don't have to walk in your shoes, but I don't think it's as much about you per se, because I don't think people follow the ins and outs of, hey, here's the infrastructure we invested in the state party, and look, we won a trifecta in Minnesota. That doesn't just happen, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's about an underlying level of frustration. That takes me to the other side of the coin, though, that I wanted to hit on. I think, and I was hoping maybe you could take us a little bit further inside how the DNC and the Democratic Party works.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, to me, it's insanely interesting. It's like, I think it's very underappreciated. Actually, Axelrod had something to say about this morning. He said, in speaking about how the party messages on this National Guard thing, he said, it'll still be a heavy lift to get everyone singing from the same hymnal. You ask how the party is navigating this, as if it's some kind of coordinated operation. It decidedly is not. Well, no shit, Axe. At the DNC, even just at the DNC, you've got, tell me if I get any of this wrong, you've got the chair, you've got the vice chairs, you got a treasurer, you got a secretary, you got a finance chair, you've got official DNC members from the state parties, you've got the college Dems, you've got federal and state elected officials, some of whom are official members of the DNC, some of whom are kind of their unofficial power bases that are not members of the DNC, but you better listen to them. You've got super powerful consultants who run most of the TV money that we're putting out there. Then you've got the billion-dollar donors who are giving most of the funds that go into that. So, you got to get together with them at the Democracy Alliance. I'm just saying that this is an insane mishmash of power centers. This is not the RNC, where there is one person at the top and it is a hierarchy. Did I get that right?
Well, most of it you got right. I mean, listen, as it relates to, I think in terms of the org structure with the officers and all of the DNC members, you have that. And it's a diverse group of people. Right? Imagine, not only do you have the 50 states, but you have the territories, you have the District of Columbia, and you have Democrats who live overseas. They're all parts of the DNC as well. So Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and Guam, like all of them are a part of that. I think a lot of people like to overemphasize the influence that consultants have at the DNC along with donors at the DNC. The largest bulk of money that we get at the DNC comes from grassroots donors. It's the $5, it's the $10 from the emails and the text messages and even the hard mail. And people send that in. of course, a percentage of that comes from large dollar donors, folks who can give, the $10,000, or there's some folks, the max that you could get from a donor is about $1 million. And some of those donors don't really ask for much other than they just want you to win. They're not demanding certain policies. And one of the things I think is important for folks to understand is the DNC is not a policy committee, right? The DNC is focused on the infrastructure of the party. And so sometimes people think that the DNC is generating policy. No, that happens from Capitol Hill. The House Democrats and the Senate Democrats will work on Capitol Hill to develop the policy. The only time that the DNC really works on policy is every 4 years when we're working on the platform for the convention. And that policy is usually, Matt, driven by the nominee. They determine what those major components of the policy are with some input from Democrats across the country. But the DNC is not a policy committee. The DNC is not a recruitment committee. We don't go out and recruit candidates. There are other committees. You got to think about the Democratic Party as a pie. Like the ecosystem is a pie. The DNC is only one slice of that pie. There are other slices like the DCCC, which is the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Those folks work with state parties to recruit people to run for the House. The DNC doesn't do that. So the chair of the DNC is not calling up House candidates. Now, if the DCCC calls me as chair and says, Jamie, we know that you have ties in this state and that state. Can you call and help on the recruitment? Of course I'd do that in support. But that is not the job of the DNC. The job of the DNC is to, one, support state parties so that they can do their jobs, which are recruitment and all these other things. Two, run the presidential primary process. That is something that they do. And that is within, no other entity owns that, but we do. Three, do the convention, which is a nominating convention for our nominee. That is something that we solely own. But when you think about ads, the DNC does very little in terms of paid TV advertisement. That either comes from one of the other party committees or from the candidate itself. What the DNC will do is, you'll get text messaging and mail and those type of things. But in all of those spaces, we are not really operating in that. So part of the frustration is that people think the DNC does one thing. So their expectations for what you do is here, but right. The reality is there. And so they never meet.
They never meet.
And that's why I say, Matt, that it's important for folks, because if you get a better understanding of how all these things work, then you'll feel a little bit more comfortable about where things are going. But if you are always thinking, well, the DNC is pulling these strings and they're recruiting these candidates, or you're not recruiting those things, no, because that's not the job of the DNC. There are other entities that does that. So if you want to judge us based on what we do, not on what you think we do, because sometimes that's not the right thing.
Right. And I mean, just to give people a bit of a window into this, like, so if you're working for an individual member of Congress, right? I work for 3 individual members of Congress. I work for a committee. What ends up happening is, you've got the head of your party in the House, for example. And then you've got the whip under them. You've got the caucus chair under them. So you've got kind of an infrastructure there. You've got bright, younger people, under them doing a lot of work to try and figure out, hey, here are some resources for you. But this is like 200 some odd small businesses if you're a House member. And, you've got the DNC and their various arms there, and you've got the leadership of your party there to help you, to, hand off, you could talk about this. Here's some way to put this. Here's a piece of polling that we've come across. Here's some messaging advice. But they're basically begging you. They're basically begging you. And they're also, if they're smart, deferring to you because you probably know what's going to work in your district best.
That's exactly.
And, so for example, I worked for a member of Congress from Maine's 2nd Congressional District, Mike Michaud, now represented by Jared Golden. I will tell you,
a hard district for
a hard freaking district. Now, this isn't to make excuses, but I will tell you that the messaging that we applied in that district was very different
Yes.
Then the messaging applied in my home district where I spent the other half of my childhood growing up on the Upper West Side of New York City.
Yeah.
Not the same set of messages. And so none of this is to say, going back to the original point that there aren't legit criticisms. There are of Democratic leaders, the Democratic Party, the Democrats. It's just a window that I wanted to give, and I think you did very well, into the reality of this is a fractious, very exuberant, multifaceted party with power bases and active brains at many levels, state and local, federal, and lots of conversation, active conversation going on. The ability to direct it, even if you're in an uber powerful position, is quite constrained, a lot more constrained than people think. And, you can lead the donkeys to water. What they choose to drink is really up to them.
Matt, can I add one more?
Please.
And particularly on the messaging, because I hear this so often. I don't understand why we don't have a unified Democratic message. And I think what folks have to understand is this. Unlike the Republican Party, take a look at the Republican Party. They are much more monolithic and monochromatic, right? They are not as diverse. They are not as diverse as the Democratic Party. If you look at America and America's diversity, you find every bit of that America's diversity within the Democratic Party. You don't see that in the Republican Party. The one thing is, I believe that diversity is our strength, but one of the things with diversity comes complexities, right? And that means when you have a complex structure, you have a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds and experiences and religions and, sexual orientation and gender identities and all those other things. That means that those people are not always going to be on the same page about what the priorities are, right? Because education may be number one on my top 5 priority list, and education may be on your top 5, but it may be number 5 instead of number 1. And so the question is, if our message is about my number 1 and it's not about your number 1, then you're going to get pissed off, right? Like, well, why aren't we talking about this and that and this? A Democrat from Beverly Hills can be very different from a Democrat in Montana, who's different from a Democrat in St. Louis, who's different from a Democrat in Chicago, who's different from a Democrat in Orangeburg, South Carolina. That's different than a Democrat in Maine and one in Brooklyn, right? Yes, they may be all in the same party, but in terms of their priorities and the things that are important for them may not all be the same. And so that's why the message has to be one that is grounded on the ground, that all politics is local, has to be grounded in the ground, so that you're not just parroting what DC is telling you, but you are really focused on what the people in your communities are saying that they want you to do and to fight for. And that's why you're not going to get this big unified message from the party, because it's hard to do that when you're as diverse and large as we are.
You can't get the same message between two towns. I mean, you ran for the U.S. Senate. When I was the chief of staff for a member of Congress running for the U.S. Senate, and another not so great year for Dems. So we had a similar experience to what you did. I was a surrogate, meaning that's a fancy $10 word for I went out to campaign events on behalf of my boss, and I was speaking to a town Democratic committee, to a room full of people, and I had my set of 3 issues that I really wanted to hit. They were well poll tested. We knew that they were the winning issues that we absolutely had to push in order to win. And I finished speaking, and the town Dem chair stood up and just stepped all over what I had just said. It's like, yeah, you left out the following things, and I'm like, well, that's intentional. That's not what we wanted to talk about. But I couldn't even get the local town Dem chair to agree with me about what the most important issues among Democrats to talk about was. And I'm sure you encountered that all of the freaking time. Speaking of having a hard time talking to people and having real conversations, Jaime, what are you doing, man? I don't understand this. You are a Yale law school trained, big-brained hotshot who's led a multi-million-dollar organization, been in the councils of the leaders of this country. Why are you doing a podcast, my friend? This is hard. This is hard. And if this is not hard enough for you. You're like, no. I want to take on this challenge. As if that isn't hard enough. You, as part of your podcast, want to break through and get politicians to say things that they would not otherwise say anywhere else. I am astounded at your chutzpah. Seriously, joking aside, tell us about this and what you're trying to do with this. What are you trying to achieve for the party and for what you care about?
Well, Matt, we often talk about the Democratic Party brand, right? And partly that brand has been built by other folks. It's not the party that is built its brand. It's been the opponents to our party or the media itself. And they have defined who we are. And we don't get the opportunity to define who we are, right? You don't even get that opportunity. You go on these TV interviews on MSNBC or CNN or Fox, and they will define what you are talking about, what you can express, how you express it, and they give you this short little block of time in order to do that. So when I was chair, one of the things I wanted to do at the DNC, and again, this is when the difference between having the White House and not having the White House, I wanted to start a Democratic channel on YouTube called Dem TV, where we would have had a series of shows featuring some of the Democrats, members of Congress, activists, and all alike. But it got shut down. They were like, well, I don't know if we need to spend resources on that. Those are resources we can use for radio or some other things. And so, I was hurt by it. And I thought that was something that we really needed because we needed the opportunity to find ourselves. Unlike Fox, which is an extension of the RNC, MSNBC is not an extension of the DNC. I mean, hell, just take a look at the covers that they had of Joe Biden sometimes during his administration. Because if that is the case, then, we need to get some better friends if they're supposed to be helping us, because it wasn't. But nonetheless, we need to be out there, and we can't just pay for it off of TV ads because people aren't watching TV ads all the time. And, they're getting their news and they're getting their media from now social media, podcasts. And so I wanted for us to lean in. So after my time at the DNC, I thought, well, no need to ask or to look for somebody else to do it. Why don't you brush yourself off and decide to do it yourself? And that's what I did with At Our Table. It's about breaking through these caricatures that people have developed of folks within our party and understanding that the leaders in our party are three-dimensional. They have fears, they have hopes, they have dreams, they have ambitions. As Governor Beshear said, we all have a why, but we don't get an opportunity to really understand what that why is. And so what I'm hoping that At Our Table can be is an opportunity for folks to say what their why is and for Democrats to hear that as we make some of the most important decisions that we will make in our lifetime. Who will be our leaders in 26? Who will be our presidential leader in 2028? And so I'm having a great time doing it. Really interesting conversations with a lot of different people. I've had Governor Beshear, Governor Westmore, Governor Walz. I had Hunter Biden, which was an amazing interview. It really was. If folks haven't seen it, they should.
Would you like to get a tease?
Yes,
I suggest let's tease people. I mean, look, I think what you're aiming for here. I'm going to ask you about this in a second, but this is just a little snippet of, I think, a flavor of what you're going for here, which is he gets a little pissed off here. Well, let's take a look at it.
Chuck Todd say that Joe Biden really is the worst of the worst because he's a bad person. And he's the exact opposite of who he says he is. Because if he really loved his family, he would have never run for president, because he had two children that were suffering from addiction, and he just had lost his family, and his family was falling apart. And I feel like, just like, number one, who the fuck are you to say what, Joe Biden as a parent? But I can tell you, as his son, with nothing to gain from this anymore, right? nothing to gain from sitting here and defending my father or saying what I truly feel is this, is that the single thing that has always united us as a family and given us purpose and given us the feeling throughout all of the things that we had to go through is that there's no power greater than waking up in the morning and putting 2 feet on the ground and realizing that you have an opportunity to make a difference in somebody else's life.
What are you thinking as he's getting pissed off there? And how do you in these conversations get to, because I can see in the chats people are like, okay, I see what you're going for, but how do you get this to be different than the kind of thing that you would get on MSNBC?
Well, in that scene, in that part of the interview, he's talking about Chuck Todd criticizing his father and basically saying that Joe Biden, this myth of Joe Biden be a good father is just a myth, and it was a lie that he promoted to the American people. I wanted to ask that because you and I are both fathers. How dare you question somebody's love for their kids? Like, who gives you the damn right in order to do that? And so I was pissed off when I saw that criticism, and I wanted to get from Hunter, because like, if anybody ever said that about Jamie, you don't love your kids because you ran you were the chair of the DNC. Fuck you. Yes, I love my kids. And the reason why I love my kids is the reason why I chaired the DNC, because I wanted to make sure that life could be better for them, right? And to do my part in fighting for that. And so, when I saw that, I was like, it got emotion out of me, and I'm not Joe Biden's son. And I was like, I would love to hear from his son, how do you felt when you heard that? Again, we're all humans. Yes, we may have these fancy titles and these positions, but in the end of the day, we put on our pants the same way. We brush our teeth. We go and provide for our families. And it's important to not lose the sense of humanity in this politics thing that we're in. And so what I'm asking are questions that I would want somebody to ask me if I'm in a similar situation and I'm hearing people coming at me or coming at somebody that I love in such a manner. And so again, I think part of the reason why I can have these conversations is because these are folks I have relationships with, right? And so they know my goal is not a gotcha question. My goal is not to try to put them in a corner and make them answer this. And this is not 60 minutes. But my goal is for them to let people look into them as humans, as fathers and daughters, as sons and spouses and wives and all of those things, so that people get a real sense of who they are. Because ultimately, when people know who you are, they get a better sense of whether or not you could be a good leader, whether or not you can actually fight for them and their families and their communities. And so, that's really the fuel to the fire. My interview with Annie Andrews, again, was tapping into that, right? And so I hope people enjoy these things because they're different. You're not going to find this on MSNBC. You're not going to get this on CNN. But I hope it gives you a better sense of the people that we have in our party and people who want to be leaders of our party as well.
And I think that's a lot of what I go for on this show as well, which is, look, I mean, like I said, I try, unless it's like truly trolly stuff, I try to put up the comments, even the critical ones. I've had people tell me on this, it's like, I really miss Cliff, who's, the host of this show on Wednesday and Thursday. And it's like, okay, I hear you. It's like, I think that we don't have to fully, okay, but we don't have to fully Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
To get the same thing that is of value in what he does. People feel an authenticity in that. It's something that our intern at Worth Knowing brought up 2 weeks ago when I popped him onto the show here. Like, for his generation, that authenticity thing, I know this is like overdone, it's trite, but that authenticity thing is very, very real. And the people are so, what do we know about Americans? They want change. They fucking hate politics. And if you're going to try to ask them to vote for you, to believe in you, you got to give them something that doesn't feel like pre-digested, gobbledygook.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of willing to go to, some uncomfortable places. It's like you've sustained some criticism, and I think some of it, you've embraced, and some of it you have pushed back against, I think, quite ably. So let's do a little bit of that function here. Let's go to some uncomfortable places for a second. Oh boy, here we go. You're trying to get real with people on real stuff. So I want to grab a hold of the third rail of the Democratic Party with you right now until my hair is standing on end like Doc Brown in Back to the Future. I want to talk about identity politics.
Yes.
I'm going to quote from an AP article about you in December. Democratic National Committee Chairman Jaime Harrison delivered a steadfast defense of his party's commitment to racial equity Thursday. Interesting. They chose equity, not equality. Interesting. Drawing on his own identity as a Black man to push back forcefully against critics who say Democrats need to abandon identity politics. People of color need to see Democrats fighting for them, and that cannot be the excuse for why we win or lose, Harrison said in a passionate speech to state Democratic chairs meeting in Arizona. Now, I hear that, and I'm 100% behind you and 100% with you on that. And at the same time, as a Democrat who passionately feels that we need to fight our ass off against the authoritarian menace in the White House, and we need to win, we need to break through and we need to win, I'm concerned about the amount of evidence that's stacking up that we're not communicating those values that you enunciated so well in a way that's working. I mean, for one thing, there's the AP Votecast data showing, well, here, I've got it here. I'm going to pop it right up on the screen, showing the demographic shifts that we saw between 2020 and 2024. And the thing that we're losing here, and by the way, I'm sorry for the people who are in the chats, just to cut in on myself. I'm sorry for the people in the chats who are responding to my point about Joe Rogan. I hear you that he's an idiot. And I hear you that he's a moron with a microphone. I also just want to point out that he has a huge audience that he's breaking through to, and there are lessons learned. Even if he is a moron, I'm looking for someone who can break through to more Americans with messages that are not idiotic and are not moronic. And I'm hoping that Jaime can be that person, or me, or both of us.
Well, one of the things I want to say, and before we get into this, is, this is what I mean about frames and how frames are built, and sometimes they're not built by us.
Yes.
So when we launched my podcast, there was a journalist who wrote, "Is Jaime Harrison wants to be the Democratic Joe Rogan?" In my conversation with this journalist, who I like a lot, I never mentioned the two words Joe Rogan. Right. And so, but that is, he's taking, and that's the frame. And so he puts that in the headline and all, but I never said Joe Rogan. I don't want to be anybody other than Jaime Harrison. Right. I'm very happy with being who I am. Right. And I understand, and anybody, you know me for, well, hell, we're probably approaching
coming up on 20 years.
Yes.
Probably.
That I'm always going to be the genuine, authentic self that my grandparents raised me to be, right? Who loves people, who finds the joy in almost everything, but will fight like hell for the people who I love. Like, that's who I'm going to be. And I've always been that, and I haven't wavered from that. And so what I want my show to be is the best Jaime Harrison I can be. I don't need to imitate anybody else. I don't want to be anybody else. I don't want any of the shows. Hell, yes, I would love to have the number of subscribers that Joe Rogan has. That would be great. That's the one thing I would love to imitate. But in terms of his show, it's very different. It is very different. I know these people who I'm bringing onto my show. I have relationships with them, and I want the people to get to know those folks in the way that I do. And that's part of what the motivation is. That's what I'm trying to do here. Again, it's very different from Joe's show or different from anybody else's show. Again, I just want to be the best person that I can be, not anybody else. And so, but the media will build a frame and then everybody will respond, because we're in this society now where we only read the headlines. We don't actually read and see the direct quotes from people in that. And so like people will respond to that. Well, he's no Joe Rogan. Well, hell, I didn't want to be, right? I just want to be the best Jaime I can be and to highlight the folks in our party, because I am tired of going on podcasts or seeing interviews where they're even Democratic friendly people and all they do is they spend their time shitting on the Democratic Party.
Right.
Like that is, I have problems with that, because we have one party that is standing up for our democracy right now. And it's like if you have a brand new car and every day you throw mud on it, and then after 2 months you're like, well, why is my car as shiny as it used to be? It's because you dumbass, you throw mud on it every damn day, right? It's exactly what it is. And so stop doing that. When we had a nominee, like people were like, you get a nominee, there's no do-overs. There's no do-overs. So if you just shit on the nominee every day, regardless if you don't like him or not, I don't care. But we know that this is who we're going to go into the fall with. It's either going to be this person or that person. So choose. Then when you get the opportunity to do something different the next time around, then do something different. But folks, I mean, it's very simple. Like I'm not, Matt, I'm not progressive or conservative. I'm pragmatic. And you'll find that with a lot of black voters. I don't want to generalize black voters in general, but for my part of the country, that's what we are. We are very pragmatic. And the question is, are we going to win or are we going to lose? Like, and what do we do? What can we do in order to determine which of those outcomes happen? But all of this other gaming out and doing all this other bullshit, we don't have time for that when we have a fucking despot in the White House who's trying to take away every freedom and right that we have gained over the past few decades, right? So stop playing games with us. And so when people ask, then going back to your identity politics, that is part of my identity as a black man in this country, right? Who is the progeny of folks who came to this country enslaved, right? I'm bringing all of that with me. And so when people say, well, you just need to get rid of identity politics, you're telling me then to get rid of all of the stuff that makes me who I am. And yet you want my community to continue to give you 80, 90% of our vote every single time. In essence, it's a big fuck you to the black community when people say that, right? No, why don't you work on your identity? Get your brothers and sisters, your aunts and uncles to stop fucking voting for Republicans and to actually vote for Democrats who are doing stuff in order to help them out. So that's why I get passionate about this stuff. Like, it is not an academic exercise for me. This is life and death. The KKK marched through my grandma's town when she was a little girl. That wasn't too far ago, right? And if we don't get our stuff in order now, that same type of stuff can happen again. And I'd be damned if I let my sons grow up in a world like my grandparents did. So that's why I get like, I really get incensed about this stuff.
And you should make no apologies, not that you were going to. No apologies for that. Because, and I mean this in the best possible sense, everything that you just expressed is the part of the Joe Rogan experience that I think we need to get to a democratic version of, where people respond. I will tell you that I was responding to everything that you were just saying, right? And it connected to me on an emotional level, and it's a non-word mincing, non-bullshit laden approach to just saying like, hey, you know what? Yeah, we have a fucking race problem in America, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. Now, you and I also both came up politically during the inception of the Barack Obama effect, and we both recognize that he was an unparalleled political genius who somehow, this is like stranger than fiction, somehow managed to say to white America, not only should you elect a black man president, but also if you do, you can feel amazing about yourself and you can pat yourself on the back. And then we did it. Well, we, all of us collectively, and then we threw a big party and then there was, like a big backlash, and then we ended up with Donald Trump. But the point is, there is clearly, we have to figure out a way to channel the kind of authenticity and passion that you just displayed, an experience that other people can't connect to because they weren't raised by your grandma, right? We need to find a way to channel that and express it, but also not have this effect and not have Americans tell pollsters, as they did to Blueprint, that the third highest reason for not supporting Kamala Harris was, quote, that she was too focused on cultural issues rather than helping the middle class. And among swing voters, that was the number one reason, the strongest reason for not supporting Kamala Harris. And it gets back to what you were saying a moment ago about framing. By the way, for people who are listening later on audio only, I should tell you that what I'm showing on the screen here is the margin shifts among different demographic groups from 2020 to 2024. The biggest shift, 21 points among black men. The next highest shifts, Hispanic men, Hispanic college, all of these in a bad direction from Democrats' standpoint. But
Matt, one of the things that I wish the pollsters will, it's not only about asking that initial question, but digging deeper to ask the questions, right? Because it is not unique to the Democratic Party that it focuses on cultural issues. What the Republican Party focuses on cultural issues extremely, right?
Yeah, right.
So they, when they talk about identity politics, they only talk about identity politics when they refer to the Democratic Party. And when they are referring to the identity politics in the Democratic Party, it's usually folks of color. And more specifically, it's black folks, right? But aren't Christian conservatives, isn't that an identity group?
Yeah.
Right. And are Republicans free to pander and do all of the things that they do there? Is there criticism for them to do that? But if Democrats are talking to black folks, then there's the critique or there's criticism, right? I want folks to really to start to peel back the onions. You can say that these identity politics, I mean, gun owners, right? The gun owners, the NRA folks, yeah, that's an identity group, right? Again, cultural conservatives, that's an identity group, or evangelicals, that's an identity group. But it is totally fine to talk to those folks. But if we talk to these folks who are in these particular groups, then we got a problem. Then, it is something that is bringing down the party. And so I think we got to be a lot more robust on pushing back on some of these things and asking that second and third and fourth question to really get at the root of what are you really pissed off about? What are you really not happy about? Do you believe that you are losing something or as a result of us talking to this group or working with this group or whatever? Get to the root and the core of what it really is instead of the surface level stuff. And we say, well, maybe that's a problem, right? I want to get to the heart of it.
I think that I'm just going to respond directly to Jim Williams here, who's not only prolific in the chats, but extraordinarily helpful in highlighting key chats and who we are. So thank you for that, Jim. And I'll just say, you're saying here, Christian conservatives are covering for the pedophile in chief. There, I've said it. I am going to take no moral lessons from Christian conservatives anymore after the so-called Christian evangelical candidate oversaw the dismantling of USAID that is going to cause 300,000 children, mostly in Africa, to die this year of a collection of diseases, including AIDS, which, by the way, George W. Bush, talk about a quaint time that you started the top of our conversation with. George W. Bush, I've said it before and I'll say it again, deserves a Nobel fucking Peace Prize for PEPFAR. And I know he's probably also a war criminal for what he did in Iraq, but both things are true at the same time.
Yeah.
He is directly responsible for saving 21 million lives over the last 25 years, mostly children in Africa. And yes, that deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. And yes, Donald Trump, not Doge, not Elon Musk, because the buck stops with Donald Trump, tore all of that up. And he's killing children. So I'm not going to take any lectures from Christian conservatives, and I'm not going to take any guff from people who are like, you're talking too much about cultural issues. I agree with you on that. I would just say, I mean, just because I know we've got to move on and we're hitting the top of the hour. Look, this is another thing where I think both things are true at the same time. I think we have to not be afraid to talk to Black folks in America, to talk about racial issues and other folks of different identities in America. And I think we also have to re-find some of the magic that Barack showed us the way on of, here's a way we can do it that's aspirational and makes people feel good. Yeah. Now, we're not always talking about issues that are designed to make people feel good. I understand that. But, there is an inclusive way to do it. I do think our language has become a little bit too woke, a little bit too alienating. And we've got to find a better way to do it. But that's my attempt to square the circle there. We can move on or
no, I think, well, one, again, I hate how, again, the conservative folks have taken a term like woke and made it into a negative, right? Again, folks need to ask, what's the history of that word? Where did it come from? It came from during the civil rights era, where they basically said that African Americans needed to always stay woke to understand places that you go to, that you may lose your life as a result of it, right? And so they take this phrase that is rooted in the African American experience of oppression, right, and has turned it into something that is negative about African Americans, in particular. And so again, it's about digging deeper and figuring out all these things. I do believe that Democratic language, and it's not even a Democratic Party, it's folks within the party, right? But they'll take people within our party and tag the whole damn party with it. Whereas the extreme in their party, we don't dare put that on the Republican Party.
Right. That's why they were so thirsty for that Sydney Sweeney shit.
I don't even know who the fuck Sydney Sweeney is. Like,
yeah, I didn't either until I had to look it up.
Exactly. You put that on. I mean, it's stuff that they create. It is literally stuff that they create in order to distract or to project, right? But my real point is this: is that I think there's some in some that may affiliate with the party because sometimes they're not even in the party, like they're outside of the party. Who will create all of these fancy languages and words and phrases that I have no idea what the hell it is. Like right now, some of the more progressive folks is like Jaime Harrison is a neoliberal. Wait, who the fuck uses words like that? No normal.
I actually don't know what that means.
I have no idea what the hell that is. Or your establishment. I guess when 80% of your community goes and vote for Democrats, I guess Black folks are the establishment of the Democratic Party, but we don't get most of the damn benefits of the party, even though we do that, right? I'm saying all that to say a little tongue in cheek is that we're just too cute by half on some of this stuff. And we need to do what my grandfather said to me when I got back from college. Just speak plain English. Make it plain to me. I don't need all of this fancy language and all this other stuff. Just speak to me in a normal fashion about where we are and all this other stuff. It's just, again, it's just kind of crazy stuff. I am tired of the internal bullshit and fighting that we have within our party right now. When if I agree with you 80% of the time or 70% of the time, take that as a goddamn win and build on that, right? And let's focus on the people that we don't agree with 0% of the time or 15% of the time.
That's the main point. And I think we could take a great page out of our friends at the Human Rights Campaign and the approach that they took in the 2000s in turning around one of the largest turnarounds in public opinion in recorded polling history on the question of marriage equality. And I've had a friend of mine, another former congressional operative, candidate out in San Francisco who worked for the Human Rights Campaign. I've told his story before, and I've taken through, like, he used to go door to door. He'd have some of the toughest conversations, and it was always like, let me meet you where you are. You're able to go this far? Cool. We're 70% allies. I'm not going to judge you because you haven't caught up to the right pronoun language here yet. I'm not going to condemn you for that. You know, you're most of the way there for me. I had a couple of friends, 2 women who got married. The dad was not a liberal, and he showed up to the wedding kind of last minute. He wasn't super enthused about the whole situation.
Yeah.
And in his wedding speech for as a father of one of the brides, he said, you know, when this all came to me, I had a lot of getting used to the diversity of it all to do, but I got there and I'm here. That's all it takes, right? Is like, let's get 60% of the way there. Let's get 70% of the way there, and let's build on that.
There you go. There
all right,
you go, my friend.
So now that we've solved identity politics in America, I'm going to hit you with one more. You got a few more minutes?
Yeah, I love this. Let's go.
All right, here we go. See, this is the thing. We are aiming for real talk with Jaime Harrison. That's what At Our Table is all about. We are not pulling punches. We are not fucking around here. After I'm done with my upcoming question and rant, I will put all of your provocative chat comments up here that I can. Keep them coming. All right, I've got a provocative one for you here. I love this. All right. So back in the day, I used to turn to Jaime for all kinds of sage political advice, strategy advice, right? Back in our Capitol Hill days. I am thinking very much about either writing or pitching to my editors at Newsweek for my next article, the following theme. And I would like to see if you agree or you want to talk me out of it. And I'm definitely going to get you in trouble with all of your old DNC friends. This is great.
Boy, let's see.
Oh boy, yeah, you're in trouble now. All right, here it is. Look, I've had David Pepper, the former chair of the Ohio Democratic Party, on this show before.
Love David.
Love David. I'm a fan of his core message, which is we've got to be more bottom up. As Democrats, we over focus too much on the federal level, big, bold federal legislation and all that shit. We miss the state and local level. We miss the state legislatures. I had Amanda Littman on a few weeks ago. Same message. I am on board with that most of the time. In 2026, I am not. Yeah. My case is, and I'm sorry, I know you just had a Senate candidate on your show, and you might have to disagree with me on this. I think we throw everything else overboard. I think the only thing that matters is 40 House seats that are potentially winnable. I'm going to put it right up here on the screen. This is from the Cook Political Report. These are all the seats, and there could be give or take. You could have different categories here. People can disagree. But these are all of the seats that are potentially winnable for both parties. 40 seats. It's a very biblical number. I think the existence of the republic comes down to, can Democrats win most of these seats? Can we win a majority in the House of Representatives? And so my argument, notwithstanding all of the caveats that I gave before about, hey, you can't really direct one Democratic Party message. Hey, you can't really unify this party. Notwithstanding all of that, my argument here would be that we're doing battlefield triage. This is life or death for America. And we need to put absolutely everything, and I mean everything, into the House majority. The walls of the Citadel are collapsing. We need to erect one last one. And so everything we do as a party should be about the needs of those candidates in the middle, in those districts, and the messages that they need sent, the money that they need, the support that they need, the actions that they need. Everything else falls by the wayside. Is that provocative enough for you? What do you make of my argument?
No, listen, I think it's a strong theory. I agree with you. Like, it is our number one priority. We have to take back the House. I mean, we really, really have to take back the House. And you and I are both House guys, right? We house rats, as they say.
Yeah, you ran for the wrong level of office.
Well, I never thought, Matt, that I was going to run for the U.S. Senate. My goal was, when I was much younger, and you could give me this seat now. You couldn't give me the seat wrapped up in a bow. I always wanted to be a successor to Jim Clyburn. When I was much younger and I was on the Hill, that was my thought. But
never say never.
Listen, I can't see myself in a house with a Marjorie Taylor Greene and all that. Like, why the hell would I want to give up my time with my boys to hang out with Marjorie Taylor Greene? And well, Nancy Mace, thank God, won't be there anymore.
I have to say, the Onion nailed it when Obama was elected.
Yeah.
And they said, black man given worst job in America. I couldn't help privately to myself, when you became the DNC chair, I'm like, well, now we've got the second worst job in America.
In many ways, I love the position.
But member of the House would be third. I mean, it's
bad,
downright awful.
It is bad. But listen, I think Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker would be absolutely amazing. Hakeem I've gotten to know him well. He's just a great guy, a tremendous leader. But going back to, I think for Democrats, it has to be our top priority. The House has to be. Everything else is secondary to that. But it's just not realistic to say that they're not going to invest in Senate seats and gubernatorial seats and all the like, because at the same time, it's important for us, if there is a Democratic wave that builds, we want to make sure we're taking advantage of all of those things. We want to get more governors in these, because right now governors are the front line of fighting back against Donald Trump. We see it with Newsom and Pritzker and Hochul and Westmore and some of these folks are doing. So it's important that we have those seats. It's important that we have attorney generals. Again, that they're protecting the rights of a lot of folks, really making it difficult for Trump and his sycophants. But I think you are right in the premise that the top priority is the U.S. House. We have to take the House back. And so using everything that we have in order to do that is really important.
Two more for you.
Yeah.
Should we go to the mattresses on redistricting? Do you, notwithstanding the fine work over the last some odd years of former Attorney General Eric Holder?
Yeah, I love Eric Holder. I just talked to him this weekend.
I mean, and his organization has been doing great work to try to take redistricting out of the hands of the politicians so that politicians aren't choosing their voters. Voters are choosing their politicians. But again, I think we're talking about the existence of the Republic on the line. And I have gotten all the way to the point, and I wrote this up, a version of it anyway, in Newsweek 2 weeks ago. I'm at the go to the mattresses point. I am fully behind fighting fire with fire and mid-district, redistrict, everywhere you can to fight back and get this edge, because make no mistake, the Republicans started this, they innovated it, they created it, they have started this war, and we've got to fight it. That's where I'm at. Where are you at?
No, I'm in the same place, and I've told, again, I support General Holder and Biz over there. I mean, they've done such amazing work, and as DNC chair, I worked hand in glove with them in a number of states. They've done a lot of great work also in terms of breaking supermajorities in state houses, which is also really, really important. Folks, 2030 is on the horizon, and we need to make sure that we're well prepared for that. But I think right now, given this fight that Donald Trump has brought to us, we have to fight fire with fire. We have to ask for pauses on commissions in California. We cannot tie one arm behind our back at this juncture, and this is why Matt, I woke up in a sweat at 4:00 the other morning.
Because you were anticipating a hard-hitting interview with me.
No. But I was thinking about this particular issue. Like I went to bed reading about it, and then it woke me up thinking about it. I mean, why is Trump so hell-bent on making sure he keeps the House majority? It is not just about his agenda, but it's also about 2028. This next Congress, this next House of Representatives is the one that will certify the winner of the 2028 election,
Ew.
right?
That is a fucking killer point.
And so, we just got to be very, like, we got to be cognizant. These folks are playing goddamn chess right now. They really are. When you look at the full frontal attack on our democracy on every front, and they don't believe in the Constitution. And yes, the Supreme Court shit too, right? I mean, these folks have given the president blanket immunity. Blanket immunity. I just wrote a piece on Substack that basically said that the Taney court the Roberts court is as bad as the Taney court.
Yeah.
Remind
people that you're referring to the Dred Scott decision.
The Dred Scott decision, right? The Taney court, Justice Taney was the Chief Justice of the Dred Scott decision. John Roberts has been the Chief Justice of dismantling. It's one thing in Dred Scott where people can argue, well, black folks didn't have those rights at that point. No, what the Dred Scott decision did was robbed us of humanity in general. But you take a look at what Roberts has done is a systematic of all of these freedoms and rights that we've all gained. And we saw what Thomas said in one of his dissents, that in essence, what he wants to do is to go after other things, marriage equality and all of these other rights that have been gained over the years. These people are coming after the core of all of the hard-earned gains that we have, in order for the words that we're all created equal to actually mean anything, right? So we have to see this big picture, and that's why people need to wake the hell up. I mean, they really need to wake the hell up. This is not just, well, it's happening to that group or it's happening to that group. No, ultimately, it will happen to all of us. That poem, that First They Come poem, that is literally like history repeating itself. If you think about it, they are coming for this group, and they're coming for that group, and they're coming for that group. And in the end, who will be left after they come for all of those groups? Who will be there to fight for you? And so, this is why the urgency of now is so important, that folks, get your ass off of the couch. This is time for you to go to your local Democratic Party office. It is time for you. If you're saying that somebody needs to run, there's nobody running in my district. Well, maybe you are that somebody. Maybe you need to run. It doesn't matter that you may not, run for office before. I didn't run for the U.S. Senate before, right? So what? Sign up and run. We need to make sure not one district is left open, that there's a Democrat running in all 435 House seats, that we have a Democrat running in all that. In every state House seat, we need to have a Democrat running in that. In every gubernatorial race, every Senate race, we can't leave anything at this point, because we have to win. And it's not winning so that the Democratic Party wins. It's winning in order to save American democracy as we know it.
It's really incredible how things have kind of come around full circle. We started our conversation today with the fact that President Trump has sent the National Guard into Washington, D.C. Of course, the biggest crime wave of violence in the history of that city occurred on January 6th, 2021. And Donald Trump has pardoned all of those people. You talked about how Roberts and his court have become the Taney court. And we've talked on this show before about the fact that the Supreme Court has handed Donald Trump the twin powers of invulnerability from criminal prosecution and the pardon power, meaning he can undertake illegal actions himself and direct his underlings to undertake illegal actions. And then ex post facto, he can pardon them. Yes, I just used a $10 word of which your grandfather would not have approved. I hope he will forgive me. And what's really stunning, going back to your invocation of the famous, they came for the Protestants, then they came for the Catholics, and then they came for me, which, by the way, as a Jewish man, I very much identify with that. I'm reminded very much of this entire theme of the police and policing. And, we were talking about wokeness, identity politics, some of the overreach of defund the police, and perhaps, that time period that might have been alienating. Well, guess who just defunded the fucking police? Donald Trump. He just took over the DC police force, just took away $1 billion of funding for DC, put in federal troops. And now
and Matt, that's not the first time that he has defunded the police. He defunded them in his first administration when he cut the budgets at the Justice Department for policing across the country. So it's not the first time. Again, whenever the Republicans are saying anything, understand that it's this. It is projection. They are projecting the shit that they do onto everybody else. Like defunding the police. No, that is them. They have defunded the police. You look at policing budgets since Democrats were in control, they actually increase, not decrease, increase. But when Republicans are in control, it's, you know, certain types of policing they don't like.
And I agreed. And where it all comes together for me is the idea that, you know, it starts with ICE raids. And, you know, first they're coming for this group of people, but it's okay because I'm not an illegal immigrant.
Yep.
Well, then they're sweeping up people off the streets just because they're kind of brown looking. Well, it's okay. I don't look Latino, so it's probably all right. Then they're buffing up the ICE force and they're putting them in masks and they're saying like, you know, you can go anywhere. And if you resist or you speak out, like happened with the New York City comptroller in an event in New York, you can be detained there. That's all right. I'm not the New York City comptroller. And then it becomes, well, we're creating a strike force of National Guard members who can be deployed with 1 hour's notice anywhere in the U.S. And they don't currently have arrest powers. That was something that was litigated literally when Donald Trump sent in the National Guard around the L.A. riots. Bullshit. And they didn't have arrest authority. And apparently they don't have arrest authority in D.C., but that could change at any moment. I know that's up for legal review, but the courts haven't shown a particular backbone at this point, especially the Supreme Court. But it's okay because I probably won't get swept up by these folks unless I live in a city and I try to resist anything they do, or I'm just caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or per the earlier comment, I want to say it was from Lefty Gramps, what if in 2026, I want to go vote and Donald Trump says, oh, there's unrest at polling places, happens to be unrest at polling places in Atlanta and predominantly Black neighborhoods. Well, you got to go quell that unrest. So, yes.
And also the naturalized, you know, citizenship is, you know, he thinks we need to take a look at that, right? So,
yeah, right. I mean, but it's okay because, you know, my parents didn't bring me here when I was a toddler, so I'm probably, and the list goes on and on and on, and we still have the strength to fight now. And look, we have gotten to such an unhappy place in this conversation. I can't do that because I hope people have been able to tell in the conversation we've had thus far that you're actually a fun guy. You're a good hang, and I think your podcast is like that. We had a comment here earlier. This is the part of the show where I try and catch the comments that I haven't caught yet. From Beth Stramara Profik, that Jamie's interview with Hunter Biden was fantastic. Well, of course it was, because you have great conversations with people. And I can't let us end on such a heavy downer note. Oh, I have to shout out the Cynthia Rice, one of my favorite commenters, for responding to you. Oh yeah, you're even doing this. Another guy with the podcast. Cynthia, I put that on my business card. That's me, baby. I resemble that remark. Yes, I know. It's very stereotypical of all of us. And I finally have to get to this comment from Jim Williams. Please have the former chairman back for another interview.
Thank you,
please,
Jim.
And thank you. We will definitely have to do that. I'm going to get you out of here on the most controversial question that I could possibly ask. By how much was Kobe Bryant overrated?
Oh my God, Matt. You know, let's come on now.
I can go after your Democratic Party, but I can't go after your Lakers.
Right, like you cannot go after Kobe Bryant.
That was beyond the pale.
I mean, he's, in my mind, he's a saint, Saint Kobe, right?
Well, maybe, but I think he's well outside the top 10.
Oh my, Matt, you know, I don't think I can do another interview with you. If you think Kobe Bryant was outside of the top 10 best basketball players ever, come on, dude. I mean, seriously?
I think Jokic has already surpassed him.
Seriously?
Yeah. Steph too. Oh, yes. We're going to have to take this one offline. All right. Listen, thank you to everybody for being in the chats. I am cool with whether you're throwing criticism, shade, going off on tangents, talking about other
Shade
topics.
his ass on that, guys. Shade him on the
yes. Come after. Here's
Yeah.
where you can find me. You know what? We can just put just don't even worry about the podcast, because you can find my podcast through the Substack, worthknowing.substack.com. And of course, I am really hoping that everyone will take a moment, at the very least, go to the Substack and give a follow, give a free subscription to Jaime there. Help him out, help amplify what he is doing, because he is helping to amplify some of the voices, some of the next generation of leaders that we're looking for in the Democratic Party. And simply by giving him a little bit more algorithmic heft, you can help him do that. And that would be a good thing. And I will see everyone in a week. Have I determined who next week's guest is yet? Oh, I've got some good ones. in the wings, but no one could possibly surpass Jaime Harrison. Jaime, thank you so much for being on with us.
Thank you, my friend. It is so good seeing you, and I can't wait to see you live and in person sometime soon.
Oh, we're going to do it. As soon as we can break through the martial law in DC, I'll meet you up for a nice salad.
Let's do it, buddy.
All right, man. All right. To everyone else, stay safe, be well, keep the faith, and I will see you next week.